Before my elder sister's wedding, she insisted on taking me with her to the Marquis's estate. The young lord will surely take concubines later on. I'd much rather it be you. You and I, sisters, serving the same husband. It would be quite the charming tale. I flat out refused. I said I only wanted to marry into a regular family and be the proper wife. My sister just smiled faintly. If you don't want to, then don't. But on the day of the wedding, someone knocked me out, cold, and sold me to the filthiest brothel in town. Our mistress gave the order. Since you didn't know what was good for you, didn't want to be a noble concubine, then you can be a cheap harlot for the masses. I was tortured until I died. And then I was back, right on the day. My elder sister asked me to be her dowry concubine. Will you come with me to the Marquis's estate? The young lord will surely take concubines later on. I'd much rather it be you. You and I, sisters, serving the same husband. It would be quite the charming tale. That same fake closeness was plastered across her face, just like before. But in that instant, I felt like I'd been plunged into an ice bath. It had been too long since I'd heard those familiar words. To hear them again. I still hated her so much I was practically grinding my teeth. I'd suffered for years in that brothel, ridden by 1,000, trampled by 10,000, my body covered in scars that would never wash away. When I was desperate just to survive, I'd eaten the most vile things imaginable. I'd knelt, begging for mercy, beneath strangers, endured insults that sounded like they were calling a dog, and still, I had to smile and try to please them. Barely clinging to life was exactly like that, and hating Jiang Jin was the only thing that kept me going. But in the end, I still died. She remained the high and mighty Miss Jiang, the young lord's proper wife. I hated her so fiercely my whole body trembled. I almost let that vicious look show on my face. I dug my nails into my thigh. I kept my eyes down. Even though my body was practically numb from all I'd endured, that sharp, real pain told me for sure I wasn't dreaming. Maybe seeing me stay silent for so long. Jiang Jin smiled sweetly again and said, "Oh, if you really don't want to, it is perfectly fine. Just pretend your sister was teasing you." She made it sound like she was being so magnanimous. I collected myself, but a chill ran through me. In my past life, I actually believed her. I flat out refused, saying I only wanted to marry into a regular family and be the proper wife. Jiang Jin paused, then smiled and said, "If you don't want to, then don't." She didn't look angry at all. But my stepmother, standing nearby, shot me a hateful glare. She clearly thought I was completely ungrateful. I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought that was the end of it. To make up for it, I even ran around helping Jiang Jin with all the little wedding details. But I never imagined that on her actual wedding day, I'd be knocked out cold and sold to the filthiest brothel. The servants in our manor had taken a few measly silver coins from the madam, and their eyes, when they looked at me, were filled with utter contempt. Our mistress gave the order. Since you didn't know what was good for you, didn't want to be a noble concubine, then you can be a cheap harlot for the masses. My personal hell had begun, serving clients day and night. I couldn't even count how much torment I suffered. I eventually died a wretched death in that brothel. Even on my deathbed, I could still hear the madam muttering, "If only she'd known. How much better to have been a noble concubine. Wouldn't she still have been able to lord it over the main wife? Since I've been given a second chance at life." I looked at Jiang Jin, who was still scrutinizing me. I forced a small smile. "Sister, you're looking out for me. If I were to refuse, then I, your younger sister, would be truly impolite. I'll leave it all to you, sister, to decide for me." Jiang Jin smiled with satisfaction, but the warmth didn't quite reach her eyes. If in my past life I hadn't noticed, now I understood perfectly. She wasn't happy about this. If I agree, she'll be unhappy. If I don't, she'll just get furious. What can I say? My dear sister is a real viper, a true femme fatale. She fancies herself so superior, so refined. She has to have everything under her thumb. In my last life, it was exactly this nature of hers that made her think of bringing me into the Marquis's estate with her. But once I actually agreed, she got scared that my looks would outshine hers and truly capture the young master's heart. She is always so timid, so hesitant, always scheming, always calculating. She thought she had the whole game in her hands. But she probably never imagined that the young master already had a sweetheart. I'm going to make her lose everything. This life isn't much different from the last. Even though I agreed to enter the Marquis's estate with Jiang Jin, I wasn't allowed a wedding ceremony. Even when our esteemed mother brought up my dowry, Jiang Jin just casually said, "A concubine accompanying the bride doesn't need to make a fuss." Our esteemed mother understood perfectly. Her gaze at Jiang Jin was full of approval. "Zener, you're truly insightful. If she ever dares to disobey, feel free to punish her. Without the Jiang family and me, you're nothing." They said all this right in front of me, without the slightest hesitation. I listened, humbled. I didn't show a hint of anger. After all, my birth mother had passed away long ago. If not for our esteemed mother's fake kindness, I probably wouldn't have lived to adulthood in this house. Only I knew the truth. On the outside, I lived a glamorous life. It looked like I was treated as a legitimate daughter, but secretly, Jiang Jin made my life hell. Jiang Jin was the epitome of a noble lady, meticulously raised by the Jiang family. She excelled at everything: music, chess, calligraphy, painting. A model for the capital, her virtues were exceptional. From childhood, she was showered with affection. Her elder brothers protected her. Her father held her in high regard. and her mother spoiled her rotten. Yet, she had such a composed and generous demeanor. Many young ladies from prominent families were taught by their elders to look up to her as an example. In my last life, she got her wish and married into the Marquis's estate. She and young Master Zhou Rong lived in perfect harmony, attending all sorts of events. While at that very time, I was in that brothel, struggling to earn a living, enduring beatings and insults from others. Before I died, I heard the young master had taken a new favorite concubine, who rode roughshod over Jiang Jin. But I knew, with Jiang Jin's temperament, she definitely wouldn't tolerate that woman. In my eyes, any useless servant or object is utterly worthless to me. Living this life, again, I'm going to make her see how she'll be trampled underfoot by someone she considers beneath her. Jiang Jin still assigned me some of her pre-wedding errands, according to her. Even those clumsy servants weren't as reliable as her little sister. Outsiders just saw it as deep sisterly affection. Only I understood, after countless rebirths, how chilling Jiang Jin's casual remark was. I didn't realize you had it in you. How truly disheartening it was to hear. Using the excuse of helping Jiang Jin prepare for her wedding, I left the estate many times. In my past life, even when I lived a life worse than death in that brothel, I still managed to gather quite a bit of information. The most talked about rumor was about the young master's favorite concubine. I heard she was just a hunter's daughter. By a twist of fate, she saved the young master's life. From then on, the young master's heart was completely hers. Unfortunately, bound by his parents' orders and the matchmaker's words, the young master couldn't defy the Marquis's command. He could only secretly marry Jiang Jin, keeping it from his beloved. Less than 2 months after the wedding, he brought her into the estate. That girl wasn't one to be pushed around either. She actually managed to get the young master to publicly slap Jiang Jin across the face for her. Everyone in the capital saw it as a huge joke. They all thought that girl was finished. But in the end, that woman actually thrived. Not only that, and even got pregnant first. Word is, that was her ticket into the Marquis's estate. If my timing's right, that Miss Li must be pregnant by now. Just as I got back to the estate, Jiang Jin's personal maid, Qiu Juan, rushed up to me and practically dragged me to Jiang Jin's chambers. When I got there, Jiang Jin was at her vanity, primping. Jiang Jin knew I was there, but didn't say a word, leaving me to just stand there. I don't know how long I stood there. My legs were numb before she finally turned to face me. When she saw me, she feigned surprise. "Oh, little sister, when did you get here? Why are you just standing there? So quiet. Were you so captivated? Watching me? You didn't even notice?" As if I didn't notice. She was clearly just trying to humiliate me with an excuse. I swallowed down the hatred churning inside me and acted towards her, as I always had. "Oh, sister, don't say that. It was I who disturbed you." Jiang Jin stared at me for a long moment. Then, she let out a cold chuckle. "Spill it. What exactly have you been up to, leaving the estate these past couple of days?" I put on a flustered expression. But deep down, I knew. Jiang Jin's need for control was frighteningly strong. She wasn't stupid. Quite the opposite. She was incredibly sharp. That is why she'd picked up on my unusual behavior. But I'd already prepared my story. "Sister, I was out buying things for you." I timidly glanced up at her, my whole demeanor practically screaming, guilty. Jiang Jin's gaze flickered over me, full of disdain. "Jiang Ying, you've always been such an obedient girl. That is why you get to stay by my side. Do you understand?" Staying by her side. That was Jiang Jin's go, to line every time she wanted to scare me into line. She deliberately encouraged my dependence on her, making me open up my heart to her, thinking she was truly my kind sister, that we could talk about anything. But really, it was just to expose my greatest weaknesses, so she could crush my life anytime she pleased. I pouted, feigning an innocent whine. "Sister, I was wrong. I was just out listening to some fresh gossip. That is why I kept leaving the estate for days, trying to get the scoop." Just as I'd hoped, Jiang Jin took the bait. "What did you hear?" I hesitated, then spoke. "Lately, perhaps it is because I'm so thrilled for you, sister, marrying into the Marquis's estate. I've been so excited, I couldn't sleep a wink, afraid I'd mess up your big day. I went to the clinic to get some medicine, but I overheard the doctor talking about being called to a private home for a secret consultation. He mentioned the house seemed to belong to a young master. I was mixing truth with lies. Getting medicine was true. These days, I kept dreaming of the horrors of my past life. The images of being abused were still so clear, and Jiang Jin's smug face. I'd never forget that. As for the private residence the doctor spoke of, since it was private, how could he be so sure it belonged to a young master? There were only 2 young masters in the capital, after all. One was already married. The other was Zhou Rong. Jiang Jin's hand twitched, her brows furrowed, as if she was calculating something. I knew she was already suspicious. "Go, find out. Who is hiding in that house?" Jiang Jin mused for a moment, then had someone give me 2 taels of silver as a reward. I smiled and accepted the task. After deliberately dragging my feet for a few days, I finally feigned hesitation and relayed the truth I'd uncovered to Jiang Jin. "Word is, That person seems to be Zhou Rong's little bird, kept hidden among the common folk, and that she is carrying his child. Jiang Jin was so furious, she accidentally shattered her teacup on the floor, and at this point, her wedding to Zhou Rong was less than 3 days away. Get out! Jiang Jin never usually lost her cool in front of the staff, shattering that teacup. That was her absolute breaking point. From the hall, I could still hear her chilling words. If she wants to be a kept woman, then she can just stay hidden for the rest of her life. I was just about to keep listening in when Qiu Juan unexpectedly opened the door and stepped out. She looked a little surprised to see me, but she just grabbed my arm, her face blank, then pulled me toward the back mountain. You did that on purpose, didn't you? You knew about this all along. In just a few words, Qiu Juan seemed to see right through me. Does she know? What about two-eyed hair? As if she'd read my mind. Qiu Juan scoffed. She doesn't know a thing. Someone as arrogant as her would never expect you to scheme against her. The light was fading. I couldn't quite make out Qiu Juan's expression. From what I remembered, she'd always been Jiang Jin's sharpest weapon. And of course, she understood Jiang Jin better than anyone. Second miss, I'm guessing you want the same thing I do. So, let's team up. I didn't rush to deny it, but I didn't agree right away either. That night, I woke up again, startled and terrified from a nightmare. And suddenly, Qiu Juan's words came back to me. To make sure, Qiu Juan was completely devoted to her. Jiang Jin had married her only sister to the manor stableman. Qiu Juan had met him. He seemed like a good, honest man, and his family seemed harmonious. Qiu Juan was truly grateful to Jiang Jin for it. But she had no idea how wrong she was. Terribly, tragically wrong. That stableman had just been putting on an act. Behind closed doors, he was a gambler, and he loved to beat his wife. Qiu Juan's sister was naturally timid. She was too scared to tell her sister what was happening. It wasn't until her sister was dead that Qiu Juan finally learned the truth. She'd initially thought both she and Jiang Jin had simply misjudged the man, but she never imagined her mistress had known the whole time. Thinking back on everything, I finally understood. Jiang Jin's cruelty had been in her bones all along. After that, I couldn't sleep a wink. The moment dawn broke, after helping Jiang Jin get ready, I led her to the jewelry shop. She browsed, but nothing seemed to catch her eye. Finally, her gaze settled on me. Jiang Ying, you know where that private residence is, don't you? Jiang Jin couldn't hold back her impatience. I knew exactly why. Otherwise, in my past life, she wouldn't have waited until after the wedding ceremony to have me knocked out and sold to a brothel. Actually, in my past life, Jiang Jin had even visited me once. It was really hard to imagine someone as noble and elegant as Jiang Jin would ever step foot in a place like that. I still remember it clearly when she saw me, sprawled on the ground, barely clinging to life. She frowned and covered her nose and mouth. Her disgust was plain to see. Still alive, huh? If you'd known it would come to this, you should have just done what I told you back then. Why put yourself through all this? If it hadn't been for that day, I'd just been whipped raw by the last customer, my skin shredded by his steel whip. I swear, I wanted to crawl up and drag her to hell with me. She really did seem like she was just there for the show. But after she left, the customers started coming into my room, one after another, without exception. They were all twisted and brutal. The sores on my body never healed. They festered, bred maggots, and stank right up until my last breath. They were with me for half my life, snapping back to reality. And listening to Jiang Jin's clearly anxious tone, I lowered my head. My eyelashes hid the triumphant smile in my eyes. I know. Sister, how could I not know? I made sure to time it perfectly. Farty, calculating Jiang Jin's reaction, down to the second dementi, so she couldn't back out of the engagement and still have time to go stir up trouble. The estate Zhou Rong bought for Li Qingge was easy enough to locate, and yet not so easy either. The surroundings were quite elegant, and there were a few neighbors nearby, keeping it from feeling too isolated. The courtyard gate was wide open. You could even see a swing set under a tree in the yard. Just a glance told you that the owner had put a lot of thought into this place. Qiu Juan and I exchanged a look. Then we both looked at Jiang Jin. Sure enough, Jiang Jin's face was an alarming shade of green. Just as we were about to step inside, someone came out from inside. When she saw us, the old housekeeper's expression immediately fell. Who might you be? Jiang Jin shot the old woman a smirk. A look that wasn't quite a smile. Then she simply shoved her aside and barged right in. This was my first time seeing the rumored favored concubine, Li Qingge. She was completely different from what I'd imagined. The whispers said she was a hunter's daughter, crude and ill-mannered, but as I looked closer, she seemed more like a lady from a classical Zhangyan painting, graceful and captivating, yet not frail, like a resilient reed. She could state her case in just a few words and shut you down with a single retort, which actually surprised me a bit, judging by your bearing. You must be a young lady from some prominent family, so why are you here, trying to barge into someone else's home? She didn't mince words. She looked Jiang Jin up and down. The way you're acting. It is like you're here to catch someone cheating. Don't tell me you're the Jiang family's eldest legitimate daughter? It seemed Li Qingge had already heard about Jiang Jin. She didn't even try to hide it. You were born into a prominent family, so you must know that it is perfectly normal for a man to have multiple wives and concubines. I just met the young lord before you did, that is all. Why make such a fuss? Jiang Jin was trembling with rage. Her face was completely contorted. She barely managed to rein in her fury. You truly have no shame. Shame? What good is shame to me? That is for people like you, who claim to be so noble and extraordinary. People like us, who struggle just to survive, don't have the luxury of caring about such things. Jiang Jin's brow was clouded with dark thoughts. Her gaze at Li Qingge was full of scorn and disgust. But even more, a jealousy she herself didn't realize. Li Qingge was completely unyielding, and Jiang Jin was definitely not the type to make a scene in broad daylight. As they reached a stalemate, I noticed Li Qingge's eyes linger on me for a moment, before she smiled and looked away. You don't think I'll kill you? For the first time, Jiang Jin truly bared her fangs. Li Qingge just smiled. You know full well, I'm carrying the young lord's child now. If anything were to happen to me, you wouldn't be getting through the Marquis's gates either. That beautiful dream of becoming the Marquis's lady, you've been planning for ages, haven't you? Would you really give that up? Just let it all go up in smoke. As it turned out, Jiang Jin couldn't. As we left, the Jiang family carriage ran right into Zhou Rong. Zhou Rong's face instantly changed, but when he saw Jiang Jin didn't react, he eagerly rushed into the courtyard. Jiang Jin froze. I knew she understood. That open door was meant for Zhou Rong. The carriage hadn't gone far when we could faintly hear sounds coming from behind us. Your fiancé came knocking. Look at the trouble you've stirred up. Ching, I was wrong. Ow, 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 easy there. I don't care for her. I'll protect you. They were playfully bantering and sounded deeply in love. A cruel look flashed across Jiang Jin's face for a split second. Her palms were red from clenching her fists, but when she stepped out of the carriage, her face was back to its usual dignified elegance. All trace of emotion vanished. Once we were back inside, Jiang Jin's eyes swept over Qiu Juan and me. So, what do you two think? Will the young lord actually break off our engagement for her? Qiu Juan and I exchanged a look. Sister, Qiu Juan said, that woman comes from a low-ranking family. The Marquis Manor would never accept her. As long as you're firmly established as the lady of the Marquis Manor, a mere concubine will be completely at your command. Jiang Jin stared hard at me, as if she was trying to read my thoughts. I offered a smile in return. Absolutely. Ying is ready to be your weapon, sister. Jiang Jin smiled, clearly pleased. You know very well, she said. I don't want my child, once they arrive, to have anyone above them. My child Sushin Hasa, to be the legitimate firstborn. You're absolutely right, sister. I lowered my gaze. The old kill with a borrowed knife trick, Jiang Jin has always been a master at it. Even if it gets found out later, she can still pin the blame on me. But I'm going to play right into her hands anyway. The wedding went ahead as planned. I entered the Marquis Manor with Jiang Jin, part of her bridal entourage. The only difference between me and a regular maid was that I had my own secluded little courtyard and the official title of a favored concubine. In stark contrast to my previous life, Li Qingge was brought into the Marquis Manor early this time. On their wedding night, Jiang Jin was so furious, she smashed the new porcelain. First thing, the next morning, she still had to endure the servants' whispers and gossip, and their judging eyes as she went to pay her respects to the Lady Marquis. Zhou Rong seemed to know Jiang Jin wouldn't dare confront her. She spent most of her days lounging in Li Qingge's courtyard. Jiang Jin was practically losing her mind. You don't need to worry, sister. I began. Li Qingge's just riding high on her pregnancy. If you could get pregnant too. And hers wasn't. I whispered, coaxing, but Jiang Jin suddenly shoved me away. Easy for you to say, she snapped. That thing I told you to do, did you get it done? Li Qingge seems perfectly fine, still lively as ever. The young lord won't even step foot in my room. How am I supposed to get pregnant? Sister, I explained, the young lord has guards stationed outside Li Qingge's room. I really can't get close to her. Slap. Jiang Jin slapped me across the face. Useless. I stumbled and fell to the ground. A small packet with a folk remedy slipped from my sleeve. What is this? Jiang Jin snatched up the packet faster than I could. I anxiously tried to grab it back, but she kicked me away. Sister, this remedy is for getting pregnant, but, I pleaded, it is really bad for your health. Jiang Jin hesitated a little. Qiu Juan chimed in. If it is really so harmful, why were you secretly hiding it? Just throw it out then. I stammered, unable to answer. Qiu Juan didn't let up. I bet you wanted to keep it for yourself, she continued. Besides, what is more, Madam has plenty of physicians around her. Even if something went wrong, it wouldn't be a big deal. But you, hiding it from Madam, are you trying to use a child to raise your own status? Aha. After that, Jiang Jin glared at me, her eyes full of suspicion. I swear on my life, I cried. Sister, Ying just feels awful, seeing you go through all this. Besides, I completely depend on you, sister, for my survival. How could I possibly dream of gaining status through a child? It is more like a younger sister gaining status even through her elder sister, if anything. Jiang Jin's expression softened. She gave me a dismissive glance. Fine, she said. I'll believe you this once. Thank you, sister. I cracked a smile. Funnily enough, soon after Jiang Jin began taking the medicine, Li Qingge and Zhou Rong had a huge blowout. Jiang Jin was over the moon. When she found out I'd pulled some strings, she even rewarded me with 10 silver tiles. The very next day, I pocketed those 10 taels of silver, bought a ton of dried fruit, then snuck off to see Li Qingge. Jiang Jin probably had no clue. From the moment I first met Li Qingge, we'd been in touch constantly. I'd never encountered a woman quite like her. She didn't chase after wealth or status, just to experience the world, even knowing she'd be a concubine her whole life. Li Qingge didn't bat an eye, not a hint of greed in her. Even after finding out Jiang Jin meant her harm, she didn't flinch. When I asked what she'd do if the young master no longer loved her, what would she do? Li Qingge let out a hearty laugh. Life's life. No matter where you are, why would I ever need to rely on a man? Besides, Zhou Rong is the one who can't live without me, not the other way around. He trapped me here. Yet he doesn't have the guts to stand up to his own family. Why would I ever like such a coward? When that time really comes, I'll be gone, no looking back. I just knew such an extraordinary person was truly stunning. Suddenly, it hit me. No wonder, in my past life, she managed to completely overshadow Jiang Jin. I couldn't bring myself to harm her, and I didn't dare hope she'd ally with me. But as she saw me out, and saw me trembling, harassed by some lowlife, she changed her tune. She said I must have suffered terribly, and offered to lend me a hand. Ever since then, every step has been a joint effort, a plan we cooked up together. Jiang Jin had always prided herself on being dignified and refined. She'd never stooped to such flirtatious antics. Only when Qiu Juan and I insisted, this was a golden opportunity, did she, with a blush of shame, mimic the tricks of those courtesans. Before, I'd asked Li Qingge if Zhou Rong truly spent the night in Jiang Jin's chambers. Wouldn't she feel a chill in her heart? All I remember is Li Qingge's cold laugh back then. Trusting a man's sweet talk will only lead to a lifetime of misery. And now, seeing Jiang Jin, desperate for attention, swallowing her pride, and imitating the very courtesan tricks she despised, my eyes gleamed with a satisfaction I couldn't count. But this still wasn't enough. I wanted to watch Jiang Jin back herself into a corner, one step at a time. Li Qingge's deliberate stepping aside, sure enough, got Zhou Rong thinking wrong thoughts. Add to that Jiang Jin's pillow talk with the Marquis's lady, and sure enough, Zhou Rong stepped into the main courtyard. Before long, thanks to that secret recipe, Jiang Jin easily found herself with child. When the news came out, Zhou Rong was by far the least thrilled. I heard he sent a pile of extravagant gifts to Li Qingge's little courtyard, and even got an earful from the lady of the household. Jiang Jin gritted her teeth in bitter resentment. Li Qingge's belly was already showing now. If she didn't act soon, it would only get harder. Using her pregnancy as an excuse, Jiang Jin brazenly cut off the food, clothing, and supplies to Li Qingge's courtyard. When the Marquis's lady found out, she just turned a blind eye. Jiang Jin was finally acting like the mistress of the Marquis's estate, and the lady was more than happy to see it. If she just kept giving in, it would only make the other party look down on her even more. Jiang Jin understood this perfectly. To secure her position and favor, she even considered sacrificing me. Ying, your eldest sister, is counting on you now. You get it, right? Eldest sister can't carry this child to term, but you can. Jiang Jin stroked her belly, her gaze at me filled with calculation. She was a suspicious one. Before brewing the medicine, she'd had someone check the recipe. It helped with conception, but the baby wouldn't make it past 3 months. Still, Jiang Jin drank it, and I was already Zhou Rong's concubine. With both Li Qingge and her pregnant, I was the only one left to attend to him. Jiang Jin had them force-feed me bowl after bowl of tonic. Then, she gave me a friendly warning before sending me to Zhou Rong's bed. I guess I should be thankful that now, she at least warns me first. In my past life, she just stabbed me in the back without a word. Zhou Rong didn't touch me. That was just as Jiang Jin expected. He was clearly still obsessed with that vixen. It was Jiang Jin's test all along. After that episode, Jiang Jin seemed to finally understand Zhou Rong's bottom line with Li Qingge. She knew she couldn't outdo Li Qingge for his affection, but every time she heard the two of them being all lovey-dovey in Li Qingge's courtyard, she still couldn't stand it. Jiang Jin wasn't worried about Zhou Rong's love for her. Her calculations were crystal clear. She was set on becoming the madam of the Marquis's estate. No mistakes allowed. But Zhou Rong's obvious favoritism toward Li Qingge and his concern for the baby she was carrying gave Jiang Jin a real scare. She couldn't just get rid of Li Qingge the way she'd tormented me in my past life, but she could make Zhou Rong detest her. And the perfect chance would be the Marquis's birthday banquet in a few days, as the young madam, Jiang Jin, would naturally be in charge of the banquet, greeting guests, seeing them off. There were plenty of ways to play dirty. It would be second nature to her. On the big day, in front of everyone, Li Qingge just suddenly broke out in a terrible rash all over. She abruptly left the table. Zhou Rong was beside himself. He didn't care about appearances. He ran after her, scooped her up, and yelled for the estate physician. All eyes were on Jiang Jin and the Madame Marquis. The madam's expression was grim, It only softened when she saw Jiang Jin calmly smooth things over. Only Qiu Juan and I exchanged a look, our faces a mix of emotions. Li Qingge's allergy to osmanthus was no secret. I'd even warned her about it beforehand. For Jiang Jin to pull a stunt like that at the banquet, she naturally had her backup plan ready. But I never imagined Li Qingge would still fall for it. That night, I heard the Madame Marquis was absolutely furious. She gave Zhou Rong a good dressing down for losing all sense of propriety over a vixen. After that, she confined Li Qingge to her room for self-reflection. Since she was pregnant, she might as well stay put in her courtyard and learn some manners. The Madame Marquis made this decision because she couldn't find any solid evidence about what caused Li Qingge's allergy, and she'd been made a fool of in public. She already didn't like Li Qingge, and after the physician found out she was carrying a girl, while Jiang Jin was pregnant with a boy, her dislike only grew. But Li Qingge really suffered this time. Even the doctor said there was a risk of miscarriage. Zhou Rong had a huge argument with the Madame Marquis, and of course, it all fell on Jiang Jin. But Jiang Jin, being clever, not only sent plenty of tonics to Li Qingge, but also went to visit her personally. The conclusion was, Li Qingge must have accidentally sat under an osmanthus tree. When I went to see Li Qingge, her face was covered in countless red rashes. It was truly hard to look at. When she saw me, Li Qingge let out a bitter laugh. You were right. That viper truly isn't to be underestimated. Only then did I realize Li Qingge had been on guard all along. She hadn't touched a thing at the banquet, yet she still fell into Jiang Jin's trap. Are you feeling all right? I looked at her, hesitating. Compared to before, Li Qingge was incredibly weak. She looked like she didn't have long to live. Li Qingge seemed to know what I was thinking. I'm doing quite well, actually. Only Zhou Rong, I'm afraid, is left with just a sliver of guilt. Can it not be cured? I nodded. Looking at Li Qingge, I couldn't help but stand. My heart pounded with alarm. It was all wrong. Everything was wrong. When I got back, I ran into Qiu Juan leaving Jiang Jin's room. Don't you worry, miss. When it happens, I'll stick to my story that they were in cahoots. You won't be dragged into this. I promise. I scoffed inwardly. Living this life. Over. I guess I was still too impatient. With just a few words, I put my trust in others. With her face still marked, and her stubborn temper, Jiang Jin only needed to stir the pot a little, and Zhou Rong's heart turned away from her. Jiang Jin loved to see her looking foolish, so she deliberately happened to run into her. When we arrived, Li Qingge was swinging on a swing, just like the one in that old courtyard. Jiang Jin sauntered over, her smile full of hidden meaning. Little sister, looking like this now, if it were me, I wouldn't dare show my face. And you still have the nerve to swing. Humph, aren't you scared you'll fall? She covered her lips and chuckled. Li Qingge rolled her eyes at her. Stop with the crocodile tears. Didn't you cause this? Jiang Jin snorted. So what if I did it? Who would believe you? The young lord? I'm the Jiang family's eldest daughter. Do you think he'd side with me? Or with a discarded woman who is completely useless to him? Li Qingge glanced up at Jiang Jin. Then she suddenly smiled. You don't know, do you? Actually, before me, another girl lived in that courtyard. That very night, Jiang Jin went home and immediately started complaining of stomach pains. The Marquis's residence was ablaze with lights. Madame Marquis, the new bride, she has been poisoned with a potent venom. Madame Marquis was furious. Guards searched the place. Eventually, all suspicion pointed to Li Qingge. When Li Qingge was brought in, she still looked as frail as ever. Qiu Juan and I knelt on the other side, watching as someone next to her pulled out a packet of fragrant powder. Madam, this powder is what poisoned the young lord's consort. Mother, Qing. She would never do such a thing. Mother, am I going to lose my baby? Madame Marquis looked at the household physician under his pleading gaze. She slammed her palm on the table. Speak. Where did this poison come from? Li Qingge spoke without hesitation. A few days ago, one of the young lord's consort's people slipped it to me. Qiu Juan eagerly stepped forward. Madam, just a few nights ago, this servant saw the second young lady sneaking out of the courtyard. I followed her and saw her giving something to concubine Li. Madame Marquis's gaze fell on me. I calmly handed over a piece of paper. Madam, I am the young lord's consort's younger sister. How could I harm her? What is more, everyone knows I'm afraid of the dark. I never go out after dark. With that, I shifted my tone. Concubine Li didn't say who it was, yet she rushed to accuse me without naming names. She was clearly just too guilty. I've always been invisible in this household. Madame Marquis's suspicious gaze passed over me and fell on Qiu Juan, making her tremble. Li Qingge, tell me, who was that person, really? Li Qingge started to speak, then stopped, her gaze falling on Qiu Juan. Jiang Jin was just opening her mouth to speak. Her expression instantly changed. My stomach. It hurts so bad. Her face was ashen, covered in a cold sweat. The next second, she passed out from the pain. My gaze flickered over the incense Qiu Juan usually handled, and I smiled. If you asked what I saw most in the pleasure houses in my past life, it would be this. Aside from the wiles used to ensnare men, it was only the ways to end a pregnancy. Everyone in the room was thrown into a panic. The Marchioness had no choice but to order Qiu Juan taken away. But when she looked my way, after a moment's thought, she instructed me to care for Jiang Jin. As for Li Qingge, only after Zhou Rong gave repeated assurances was she allowed back to her own small courtyard. That very night, I went to see Qiu Juan. When she saw me, she shot up from the floor. When did you figure it out? I stared at her and smiled. If I can find out where Li Qingge lives. Do you really think I couldn't find out about you? You and your sister actually despise each other. You clearly set her up with that stableman on purpose. Qiu Juan froze. Then she scoffed. I thought you were a complete fool. I underestimated you. She gave me a long, hard look. Do you understand? If it weren't for you, I should have been the one to marry into the Marquis's manor with Jiang Jin, just because you're the second young miss of the Jiang family, while I'm just a servant. And I'm supposed to be walked all over my whole life. Why? After all this time, you've slaved away for her, and your life contract is still clenched tight in Jiang Jin's hand. I couldn't help but scoff. You know her so well, and you're risking your life for her. Then you must also know you won't live for much longer. You couldn't even manage this one little task. How do you think Jiang Jin will torment you? How about we make a deal? Under the moonlight, I watched Qiu Juan's eyes. Uneasily, she closed her eyes. Finally, she nodded. Back in my own small courtyard, I, with practiced ease, nodded to a few of Jiang Jin's attendants. Jiang Jin had always been a snob, looking down on every single person who served her, which is why she forgot that sometimes money and power aren't everything. Auntie Wang from the kitchen, for serving the wrong snack, had one of her legs secretly broken on Jiang Jin's orders. But she forgot one thing. The stableman who drove her carriage was Auntie Wang's husband. The guard on duty for Jiang Jin, simply for glancing at her hair, ornament too long, was beaten half to death and thrown out of the manor. And he had a gravely ill sister. With their livelihood gone, she passed away within days. And if I'm not mistaken, the young maid who swept the courtyard had been smitten with him for ages. They were even close to getting engaged. Jiang Jin's cruelty would only come back to bite her. By the time Qiu Juan was released, 3 days had already passed. Jiang Jin had lost her child. Yet Li Qingge was completely unharmed. When Qiu Juan stepped forward to serve Jiang Jin in my stead, she was, unsurprisingly, slapped twice by Jiang Jin. Why did that medicine only affect me? Why is the bastard in Li Qingge's belly still perfectly fine? Jiang Jin had suffered so much for nothing, so naturally, she wasn't about to let it go. Qiu Juan covered her face, sobbing that she didn't know. But Jiang Jin, still, mercilessly ordered her dragged away. When she saw me, Qiu Juan reached out her hand, begging me to save her. I only glanced at her, then carried the medicine bowl into the room. Watching Jiang Jin swallow the medicine with my own eyes, I couldn't help but smile. Once she'd finished, as I reached for the empty bowl, suddenly, Jiang Jin spoke. Didn't think you'd actually listen. I fought to keep my hands from shaking, and managed a small smile. Sister, I'm a Jiang too. We rise and fall together. We fall together, Jiang Jin. I couldn't tell if she bought it. But afterward, she definitely started talking to me more. The next time I saw Qiu Juan, it had been a long time. When I finally tracked her down, she was squatting on the ground, fighting stray dogs for scraps. Funny thing is, Qiu Juan was being held in a forgotten wing of the Marquis's estate, but not a soul knew she was there. Had I not, in my previous life, heard about a death in the Marquis's back compound, I never would have thought to look there. When Qiu Juan saw me, she was practically beside herself. Help me. Second miss, please help me. I just stared at her. She froze. After a long moment, she gritted her teeth and said, I get it. I know what I need to do. I'll make sure Jiang Jin's name is mud. That very afternoon, Qiu Juan stormed straight into the main courtyard and practically threw herself at the Marchioness's feet. She'd served Jiang Jin for years and knew just how cruel she could be. She was privy to countless secrets, and as luck would have it, the Marchioness was hosting a tea party for all the prominent ladies that day. Li Qingge was serving nearby, with all eyes on them. Qiu Juan, right then and there, threw caution to the wind and exposed Jiang Jin's true, cruel nature. By the time Jiang Jin rushed in, it was already too late. Shut up, shut up. She is just spouting lies. Jiang Jin looked at the stares from everyone, especially the defiant look on Li Qingge's face, and forgetting all sense of propriety, she lunged forward to clap a hand over Qiu Juan's mouth. The room erupted into chaos. Jiang Jin was ruthless. She shoved hard, and Qiu Juan slammed right into Li Qingge's belly. Li Qingge started bleeding instantly. The ladies screamed. Then, from seemingly nowhere, Jiang Jin pulled out a sharp blade, and right in front of everyone, brutally stabbed Qiu Juan to death. The Marchioness, face ashen, urged her guests to leave, spotting Li Qingge, crumpled on the floor. What are you all standing around for? Get the household physician now, right away. When Zhou Rong heard about Li Qingge's premature labor, he was so furious, he slapped Jiang Jin twice, and had her locked away again. Jiang Jin was already frail after her miscarriage, and this confinement sent her over the edge. When she heard Li Qingge had given birth to a son, she smashed her medicine bowl on the spot. I watched the medicine spill across the floor and shook my head. What a shame. but outwardly, I offered Jiang Jin a comforting look. Sister, don't fret. She is just a concubine. Even if she bore the eldest son, she'll never outrank you. Besides, her child can still be registered as yours. You can separate mother and child. Jiang Jin took it all in, but what she didn't know was that the household physician who'd examined her that day had already quietly informed the Marchioness that Jiang Jin could never bear another child. So when she went to claim the child, the Marchioness pondered for a long moment and still agreed. This is the eldest grandson of our Marquis. You'd better take good care of him. The Marchioness fixed Jiang Jin with a piercing gaze, as if issuing a warning. Back in her chambers, Jiang Jin flew into a rage. It is just a bastard child. Why should I have to beg for him? I'm the legitimate eldest daughter of the Jiang family. The child was supposedly registered under Jiang Jin's name, but Li Qingge was still the one raising him. By the time Jiang Jin caught on, she was absolutely furious. Then, to top it all off, she learned she was completely barren. She practically lost her mind. That very night, Li Qingge's courtyard went up in flames. A servant swore they saw Madame Zhou. Madame Marquis was beside herself with grief and rage, and young Master Zhou looked like he wanted to rush right into the blaze. When I knelt before them, holding the baby, they both froze. Madam, young master, it is all my fault. I failed to keep an eye on my sister. She has been obsessing over the baby these past few days, saying only her own flesh and blood could truly survive. I didn't think much of it at first, until I noticed her sneaking out repeatedly. Tonight, I secretly followed her, and saw her set concubine, Li's chambers ablaze. I only managed to snatch the young master out in time, but concubine Li, she is gone. Young Master Zhou gnashed his teeth in pure hatred. Where is Jiang Jin? Just as I thought. She is nothing but a vicious harlot. Just then, the stableman knelt, reporting to the young master. Madame Zhou realized the huge mess she'd made, and she ran, she fled. Madame Marquis had the entire estate searched, and sure enough, there was no trace of Jiang Jin. What they did find was that many of her valuables had vanished. Gradually, everyone from Jiang Jin's courtyard became a witness. The Zhou family directly confronted the Jiang family. After learning Jiang Jin hadn't returned home, they simply issued a letter of divorce and dropped the matter. Only I remained in the Marquis's estate. Seeing me covered in wounds, Madame Marquis sighed. You truly have a kind heart. From now on, you will raise this child well. Understood. Thank you, Madame Marquis. I lowered my gaze, secretly seething at Li Qingge's cold-bloodedness. She really caught me off guard, faking her own death to escape, and entrusting her child to me in her supposed final moments. If she hadn't poisoned young Master Zhou to make him infertile, I might have actually respected her a little to pave the way for her own child. She truly stopped at nothing. Better to live a free life than be a concubine forever. If she hadn't used Jiang Jin against me, I would have turned on her ages ago. Good thing I got a second chance at life, not for anything else, only for Jiang Jin. Thinking this, I couldn't help but smile. She should be happy. My entire life is nothing but a quest for vengeance. No one, I imagine, would have ever guessed that the once high and mighty eldest daughter of the Jiang family would end up like a common street whore, forced to earn her keep beneath men, returning to that hellhole once more. My body still couldn't help but tremble, but when I saw Jiang Jin, I felt an unusual thrill. I slashed her face, poisoned her, so she couldn't speak, and broke her limbs. I made her the lowest kind of whore, catering exclusively to clients with the most twisted desires. Now, anyone standing before Jiang Jin wouldn't recognize her, I imagine. When I arrived, Jiang Jin had just finished with a client. She saw me. She gritted her teeth, trying to lunge at me. Clang, clang, but she couldn't move another inch. Iron chains held her by the neck. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. See, not only did I become a respected concubine, I'll also become the mistress of the Marquis's estate, while you're stuck as the lowest kind of whore. Jiang Jin kept snarling at me until I stomped my foot right on her wound. She trembled, writhing in pain. I pressed down harder, watching her unable to move anymore. Only then did I lift my foot. Oh, I'll let you live. You'll live, but it'll be a living hell. I walked out of that hellhole. Outside, the sun was shining bright. A few turns later, a child came running and jumped into my arms. Mom, I found you. Your turn to find me. Okay, to make sure, my plan was flawless. I kept Jiang Jin locked in a pigsty for 2 whole years, before I finally sold her off to a brothel. Back at the estate, Zhou Rong and I were nothing but cordial. The Marquis was absolutely thrilled with me. I slipped on my own mask. My wounds didn't hurt anymore, but the scars would always remain. I might never truly let it go in this life, but I'll definitely live this life to the fullest.